and welcome to the Newsx Sunday Guardian Roundtable. This week, we're taking a look at the Twisha Sharma death case and also the questions that are really arising from it. Twisha, as you know, is a young girl in her early 30s. 5 months after her marriage, she was married to a family in Bhopal. She's a Noida girl. She used to be doing modeling and events and had a very outgoing life. But she met her husband through a dating app and shifted to Bhopal to live with him and his family. 5 months after her marriage, she was found hanging late night on May 12th. Now, of course, questions arise as to the state because it is an unnatural death, whether it is suicide or whether it is murder, as her family is alleging. Twisha's family is alleging harassment by the in-laws, not just for dowry, but also mental harassment. They are saying that 10:35 at night, just literally an hour before she was claimed to have hanged herself, she had a very anguished conversation with her mother. She's also been sending WhatsApp messages to her mother saying, कि मैं यहाँ नहीं रह सकती, and come and take me. मेरा यहाँ नर्क हो गया है. My husband is not talking to me. Since then, the husband, lawyer Samarth, is absconding, but her mother-in-law, Garibala Singh, who is also a retired district judge, has been taking questions, and she's on anticipatory bail, and she's been talking to the media, and she's spinning a very different story from what the parents are saying. Garibala Singh is saying she's accusing Twisha of drug abuse. She's saying that she's also alleging that there was she had some psychiatric issues. She has mental health issues. She's saying, alleging that she was schizophrenic. All kinds of character allegations are being made against Twisha, which has, of course, got her family very upset. While the post-mortem has ruled out that there are no drugs in her system, but the family, of course, is asking for, both families want more questions answered so that each side of their story can be corroborated. But what is happening, what does this say about our society also, is something I'm going to be discussing on the panel today. I have a very, heavyweight panel and people who are, I think, will help in answering some questions. I have with me Mr. Vikram Singh. He's a former Director General, UP Police, and an educationist. Leher Kala, she's a columnist with the Indian Express. And Vishaka Gupta, she's a partner at Irios Law. Vikram Singh ji, we've seen many cases like this, she was a Noida girl, but in terms of just harassment, the fact that you just take a clinical look at the facts of the case. 5 months into the marriage, there is an unnatural death. What do we make of it?
Namaskar, Priyaji and ladies. I'm so happy that you have raised this very, very pertinent point. No point, nothing will be served by raising wild allegations and sweeping generalizations. We have to be surgical about the whole episode. Now, it was a disturbed relationship, disturbed marriage, and you in your opening must mention that the WhatsApp chat that was sent by the deceased to the mother, if there was no communication thereafter, this could pass off as a dying declaration. Now, the cause of death, suicide by hanging through a belt. Now, I would give you an example. You take a belt, imagine that there's a proximal side and the distal end. I fail to understand that in 36 years of my career, how can a person hang oneself by the belt? Either you tie the neck, then how do you, for one moment, imagine you can tie that belt, whatever be the leg. It's not a hold-all belt, it's a human belt, allegedly. How can you hang it and then use it? I don't think it doesn't seem to be working out. I don't know if the police have been able to go to the scene of crime, because the scene of crime seems to be totally compromised, and therefore Giribala and Samarth could be charged for the current section 238 of the Bharati Nyaya Sanhita, the old 201 of the Indian Penal Code. Now, 46 calls were made by Giribala ji to everybody except the police. Why? Why not dial the police? The first thing should have been, they should dial 112 and the police control room, and not to 46 people. What was your purpose and intent? I'm not leveling any allegation, but things do not seem to be adding up. Now, it was a wedding that came about due to the fact that it came from a dating app. Nothing wrong in that, I would presume. But the manner in which the deceased and her character and her antecedents and her personal life are being sullied and washing dirty linen in public, that I would say is very unseemly and unacceptable by any standards. I had expected a lot more from a person who is a former retired district judge, but the fact of the matter is, three things are irrelevant. Anticipatory bail even before the FIR is lodged. 2 days of delay in lodging the FIR. Why? The post-mortem, I do hope there were 3 doctors, of which one had to be a lady, and also the videography of the post-mortem. Any news about that? None whatsoever. Again, Samarth is on the run, and the mother and the son are in touch also. If the mother can be in touch with Samarth, why can't the police nab him? And to begin with, just a reward of 10,000. And then now it was till yesterday, it was 30,000. It is a pittance. I would say that raise, enhance the reward to at least 5 lakhs, get an SIT to go after him. If Giri Balaji can be in touch with Samar, I think the police also have it in them to be with them. There are too many loose ends. I've given you just a few. During the course of a discussion, I will try to elaborate more on the investigating part.
Thank you. Thank you. That's really a comprehensive look. But Leher, you've been hearing, I think, the mother-in-law's conversations also.
Yes, I have.
The facts of the case aside, even suicide within 5 months is harassment, whether she killed her own life or she was driven to take it, or, there was foul play.
Everything I've read about her, and this is what perplexes me. She was a 30-year-old girl, vibrant, vivacious. She's held jobs in marketing. She's been a model. She was traveling. She knew a lot of people. What amazes me is that even now, girls are still so wrapped up in this whole thing of marriage. And I mean, if she was clearly somebody who had enough money, who's earned enough, who's seen a little bit of the world. And 30 is not young. You have a sense that, you have a little bit of confidence that comes with earning. What I can't understand is what was stopping her from just fleeing that house rather than sending her mother those SMSs. You have a phone, you have some money, you can go check into a hotel. What is it that compels these girls who have everything going for them to take this kind of rubbish from husbands and their families? Now, this is as a question. Also, suicide. I mean, listen, we are blessed to be alive. Life is beautiful. Even if there's there's some stumbling block in your life. Is this what one resorts to? I mean, isn't your life precious to you, to your family? So there needs to be a whole societal,
Look.
Focus on this. That listen, things get hard for everyone at some stage. This is not an option. But having said that, because I've been seeing a lot of stuff being written, which is really mean about how her parents didn't help her out, and that when she sent those anguished texts, they didn't come to her house and rescue her immediately. Now, one can't understand what compels a 70-year-old woman whose daughter has just been married for 5 months. Very honestly, even today, if it was my daughter and she'd been married just for 5 months, even I would say, beta, I wouldn't want to interfere that much because, she is 30. At some point, people have to take their own decisions, even if they're your own children. And now, of course, unfortunately for her entire family, they're going to spend the rest of their lives in a circle of guilt and grief, wondering what they could have done better. But it's just such a tragedy. This whole thing, it just seems like a farcical tragedy. I don't even want to get into whether it was a suicide or a murder. That's going to come out on its own, and there are better qualified people than me to talk about this. But girls and people in general need to be told that, take your life seriously. You can't let a man decide your level of happiness. Why is it that we are so wrapped up in all this? And when is this going to end? And you have to take responsibility for the decisions you've made marrying a person like this. And okay, if it's not working out, it's not working out. Leave. You've got a phone, you've got enough money. She's in any case smarter than most of the girls you'd meet, And she's had a versatile career, so she had the confidence to go out there, make something of her life. And then to just give it up for this, or, I mean, what can be said about this?
I think, Lair, I totally agree with all that you said. And it is, as usual, you've really come up with something more perceptive than just the headlines. I agree with you, parents to an extent, and we don't know the financial situation of the parents. No parent can just dash across. And also you feel very wary of alerting neighbors when a daughter sends these messages because you don't know whether it's an internal thing or what. So, but Vishaka, having said that, in terms of just the legal point of view and the point of view of being a young girl and the mindset, what is your take on the case?
I think I would start with the point of why marriage and why staying in one single line. I think we've all been brought up in this society with the thoughts whether we look very modern and we want to be very modern, but we at the end of the day, even in our modern lives, we want companionship. I think that's where it comes down to. Our society really looks down upon any other sort of companionship. So I think marriage is where, marriage where it comes in. Even if it is not 100% perfect, we still try and sort of make it work for the
Adjust.
reason of, yes, for the reason of companionship. I think and especially for somebody who has whether it's a man or whether it's a woman for that matter, when you walk out of a relationship to rebuild yourself, it's a very lonely process. So I think that is one fear that needs to be set aside by the society first, by our peers, by our friends, family, especially parents, like
Hmm.
Leher ma'am said. So you need to put that aside to say that, you're not going to be alone, you're not going to be lonely. If you are going through anything, whatever it may be, yes, step out of it, look at it from a fresh perspective, see if it is going to work out. And like she said, the life is not so loose and fast that you lead to very difficult steps which cannot be undone. Now, coming to the law part of it, I think the investigation is still ongoing. So making a comment on that is not going to be right in this forum. But the law still exists. There are the erstwhile 498A was there. I mean, it still is in the new BSA. It is going to the procedure has to be followed. The investigation has to be done. It Everybody knows that if it is harassment, if it is cruelty, if it is dowry, all of these have been illegal since 1961.
Right.
It is us that we have renamed it as gifts. It is us, we've renamed it as traditions. I think as a whole, the families, the society, the girls, we all need to restructure our minds across these words, across dowry, and not to start. And when you enter into a relationship,
Hmm.
whether it's whatever the platform may be, whether even if it is via shadi.com or any of these platforms, or even if it is a dating app, the question should not start of the gifts, etc., when you have decided to get married. They should start when you are at the very nascent stage of your relationship. What are your thoughts about it? Because once you're already embroiled in it, you are already in the love capture. You can't come back and say that, okay, now I don't want to talk about these, because then you're coming back to that fact that, oh, I'm going to be left, I'm going to be alone again, I'm going to be lonely
Hmm.
again.
Got it. Makes
Yeah.
sense. But Mr. Singh, just a bit about the case itself. We've seen there is a trial by media. How does that work? Because of course the in-laws are saying that because Trisha's family is putting out their side before Samarth, I assume at some point he will be caught or he will surrender. They want to first lay the ground for reasonable doubt. Do you see that is what is happening?
Priyaji, there's a very popular term now going around, that is media trial. We are
Hanji.
free citizens of a free country, and it is our job also as dutiful citizens to identify the fault lines that arise. And nobody can claim to be the holy cow that they are beyond law and the king can do no wrong. Unfortunately, this syndrome seems to be there existing in the accused as of now. Ms. Giriwala ji has a lot of explaining to do about her conduct and the manner in which the scene of crime was vitiated. To identify the fault lines in the investigation and to give what you can do better also is a part of every dutiful citizen. I would say, did you take pains to get the videography done? Did you take the samples there? What have you done about the anti-mortem injuries on the body of the deceased? Is it not indicative enough of the fact, the perversion that she had to go through? I respect and salute the words of profound wisdom for esteemed speakers Leherji and Vishakhaji. And they have said companionship at the cost of suffocation, companionship at the cost of decimating one's self-esteem. I think I'm a father of a girl also and a father-in-law also. I know what I'm talking about, but at the same time, I would say, Priyaji, that has to be a threshold thus far and no further. I totally agree with Ms. Leher, what she said about that you stand on your own feet and do not be emotionally or I would also desirable financially dependent on anybody. And yes, the deceased had it in her. She was Miss Pune 3 years ago. She acted in Tamil films. She was corrected with the media. And this is exactly what was held against her by the in-law side. Now, talking about the investigation, they said that perhaps they will go in for a fetal DNA test. What are you trying to prove and which tree are you barking up to? I to give you a situation A and B. Does it in any way tell you or give the merits about the death of the deceased? You please focus on the line of investigation and have an investigation plan in specifics. I do say that if you want to do it, by all means, but it will not help the cause of investigation to get the DNA test of the fetus done. This is my thought, because in current laws, it does not matter what is the ultimate result of the DNA. Be focused on the role of Samarth and Giribala and other people who made her life miserable. And to Miss Leher, I would say that she was articulate, she was sharp, she was very confident, but the self-esteem, when brick by brick it is demolished over a period of time, then a fragility of the mind emerges, and one small incident can break the personality and the backbone of the person, literally and metaphorically. I've seen this happen tragically in many families. Very good girls, people as highly qualified as from the IITs and IIMs, taking, a record and harming themselves. Well, this is the tragic story that is best avoided, and the best thing to do is to see whenever there are symptoms. And then my last point, Madam Giribala said that she was accustomed to using psychotropic substances.
Yes.
You were supposed to be a mother figure and a guardian of the child, the deceased. What did you do to address that issue? And if there was no treatment that was given, well, it will be held against you. Therefore, in fact, barking upon the DNA of the fetus, please focus on what treatment was given to the deceased.
All very good points, Claire. I know you want to come in, then I'll ask you. Huh?
Sure. What I wanted to say was, those wild accusations that she was on drugs and stuff. What does drugs even mean? She's not shooting heroin. Maybe she was on an anti-anxiety medication, which these days is prescribed even if you are scared to go on a flight. Now, the thing is, in the social media era, one good thing is there that you can't hide this stuff. If she was on something, there'll be some therapist she's gone to, there'll be some friend she's talked to who will eventually come out, and it's going to come out, that she was on. And that is no reason in any case. And if you are on an anti-anxiety pill, the chances of you committing suicide are even lesser.
Mm-hmm.
You see?
Correct.
Yeah. But the main question that we need to address is that if this girl till 30, she has no history of self-harm, 5 months after marriage, this happens. What is the reason for it?
Good point.
Does she have a history of trying to attempted suicides before? Is anyone asking that? There'll be some psychiatrist she's gone to. There'll be some friend she's spoken to. There'll be some post on Instagram. This is the time in which people tend to reveal themselves online. They have no shame in talking about this. And for Miss Giriraj to go around claiming that this is like is being held against her, that she's mentally unstable. This is in this day and age that just doesn't hold up. But having said that, I do feel also that I don't know, maybe it's a nostalgic way of looking at it. I feel that we guys, when we grew up in pre-liberalization India, our options were so limited that we had to work a lot harder. And mentally, we couldn't go home and say, "Arey, I'm feeling low" or something. There was no encouragement for this kind of thing, You got on with your life. You just did your studies, you try to get a job. I just feel that this whole generation of 20 to 40-year-olds, they're going to struggle through this aspect, because I feel bad for them at one level, because I feel there's no security in anything, in careers, in relationships, in family life. So a lot of them are very lost, Now, of course, the dowry deaths and all have nothing only to do with that.
But even the questions that Giribala says she asked her, about her personal life, Mr. Singh spoke about the fetus testing. Obviously, they're feeling that the child was not the husband's, which is why the in-laws have asked for a fetus testing. So I believe she says कि मैंने उससे पूछा भी था that did you see other men before marriage and will you continue to see other men after marriage? The mother-in-law is having the conversation with the daughter-in-law in the mother-in-law's own words. So is that
I think the mother-in-law is just throwing out a red herring, to distract. This is just this is just a total distraction, and that can be checked with the DNA. So we shouldn't even give any importance to the rubbish that she's speaking. But what about, how can we use this as a way to tell other girls that this is not the way? You don't have to resort to this, and you can leave at any time, especially if you have the money. See, I can understand if this is somebody who doesn't have an education, who is, comes from a family in which women are really, are victims of patriarchy. But she doesn't seem to be one of those. She seems to come from a family in which her parents encouraged her to have her own life. Otherwise, there's no way she could have become Miss Pune and held the kind of diverse kind of job she's held. So she was
Correct.
one girl who was out there doing things, and focused. So if she can resort to this, it's a very, very sad indictment of how women feel when it comes to men and marriages and the pressures they feel, beyond a point none of us can even imagine it.
Okay, I'm going to take a quick break and come back and continue the conversation. So stay with me. Hello and welcome back to the Roundtable. We are taking a look at the Twisha Sharma death case and the questions it raises about the investigation, about whether it was murder or suicide, but also what it says about society. And Vishaka, we were discussing the questions what the mother-in-law has been coming out and raising questions about her character. But by her own admission, she's also been saying that I have been asking her whether she is going to be seeing other men, about her questioning her past. All these, in the arranged marriages, yes, these questions were, as about the dowry thing, also was already asked before you went into a marriage. Now, in the world of dating apps, these questions are not asked. A, should they be asked? Is the second question. Should the mother-in-law be asking? And isn't this something between the husband and wife? So, a whole lot of it's a new rules of engagement, really.
It's actually I mean it's very I don't want to say shocking, because nothing should be shocking anymore in this day and age, but it's interesting that the mother-in-law is also agreeing to having asked these questions. These are not
She's
questions
telling
for
us
any
all this. Yeah,
Yes, these are not questions for anybody other than the couple. Whether she's had 5 relationships, 50 relationships, and whether in today's time she wants whatever the status and their sort of understanding is, if they want to have relationships along with their marriage, is a question that they have to answer, and they have to decide whether it's morally, legally, not legally, morally, and what happens in their marriage and in their relationship. It's not
correct.
for her. Even in the family, I don't think any one of us, and even whether we are from the old generation, from the new generation, we do not sit around the round table in our dining table and we discuss past relationships
With the whole family.
yes, with the whole family. It's just
Mhm.
it's not something that bodes well to even ask somebody, and especially your new daughter-in-law. 5 months into the marriage, you're asking whether you're going to have a new relationship. Why are you not talking about how how are you forging relationship with the new members of the family? Why is that not a point?
Good. Mr. Singh, the final look at the investigation. Now, whether it is suicide, can the in-laws also be held accountable? Because, there is also abetment to suicide. That would be something that would be taken into consideration.
Of course, investigation. Riyaji, that is a very important aspect, and Vishakaji will shed more light on it. The fact of the matter is that if within 7 years of marriage, the bride harms herself or commits suicide, well, the in-laws and the family have a lot of explaining to do. And in this case, more so because it is in the 5 months of marriage that the deceased died, and died allegedly by suicide. Of course, the investigation is open, but the fact of the matter is the mental trauma and torture. There is also talk, Priyaji, that the deceased had a fixed deposit of 20 lakhs and there was pressure from Samarth and Giri Balaji to hand over those 20 lakhs either to Samarth or to her or to both. That is an allegation also that has to be investigated. Why are we not talking about that? Any smallest of demand, even if it is just 5 boxes of laddus, would also be a part of indicating a window to the performance and the wiring of the mind of the in-laws. How many demands, where and how, in cash or kind, and what was given or taken during the course. Of course, the alibi always is, it is a love marriage arranged by a dating app. There was no question of dowry, but it's easier said than done. The gifts will have to be total, any transaction online or offline, in cash, and the videography of the wedding ceremony and the tilak, etc., would be a good indicator and a part of incontrovertible evidence during the course of investigation. The Madhya Pradesh police are equal to the task, but as of now, I feel, I'm maybe very harsh, but they are marking time. They are not perhaps barking up the wrong tree. Barking up the wrong tree indeed.
No, I think your instincts are absolutely right in that sense. Back to that question about dating apps versus the old way of doing marriages. Yeah. Is there something, the questions that the mother-in-law has been clearly asking the daughter-in-law, how do you react to that?
See, what I would imagine is that when, you met a guy on a dating app and the mother has had such an illustrious career as a judge, you will assume that she has a certain level of intellect and sophistication, that these kinds of, you think, ye to nahi hoga.
Ah,
Because her background suggests that,
Hmm.
something like dowry would be completely blasphemous for her, right? As
right.
somebody who's dealt with this. So I can understand this girl thinking that, oh, the family is good. And, in India, the fact is that we all come under pressure when it's marriage. Family pehle dekhte hain, right? The husband is there, but the parents also looked at.
You
So
marry the whole family.
the family ticked the right boxes ostensibly. And even when you hear her talk, she speaks very fluently. She comes across, I mean, of course, what has happened is horrific, but she doesn't come across as somebody who's not educated. And, I mean, so now this is the worrying thing is, if a person who's so high up in the judiciary, this happens in their home. I mean, how can people have any faith in the justice system here? Yeah. Isn't it really scary for all of us? I mean, what does that tell you about India?
That, that is actually the larger question. Vishaka, last word to you. Mr. Singh said that in terms of legal abetment to suicide and, your last words on this.
Like Sir said, that up until 7 years, yes, there is a likelihood. I mean, it will all depend on the investigation. The law says that if the marriage within 7 years there is a death of the woman, it will. I mean, there is already a case out that they have, filed against for abetment to suicide, for dowry death, for harassment, for cruelty. All of those are sections that are part of the FIR.
Okay.
What needs to now, I think, what we need to see in the next when the investigation is ongoing, is that whether it is done well, whether there is no character assassination of the deceased woman, whether whether it the perception, I'm not saying it is true or it will not be true, but whether the perception of the family so high up in the judicial system, is the perception of influence is visible to the media, to the family of the deceased or not. These
Hmm.
are points. I mean, more investigation will happen when it happens, and like I
Right.
said, the
Yeah.
police is doing it. But what, unfortunately, with our social media age, it is the perception that matters most. I think everyone involved across this unfortunate incident will have to manage perception first. We'll have to
Okay.
ensure that
Hmm.
the thoughts of the family and what they're thinking is managed, that being an
Okay.
influential family do not influence.
Yes. Which is what makes me wonder the kind of statements the mother-in-law is making. She's clearly thinking that it's okay for her to say all this, and she actually thinks these statements will help her case. So, which makes you wonder as to what kind of value systems we are really dealing with. But thank you all for this conversation. Thank you, Mr. Singh, for giving us the legal and the investigative angle, and Leher and Vishaka for the societal angle. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For more such videos, subscribe to the Newsx YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.